It involves a great deal of your subjective opinion based on your experience treating dog wounds, doesn't it?
You know, with all due respect, Mr. Brennan, I'm not somebody that just came in off the street. If I saw something in the Boston Globe, and Mr. Brennan, I wasn't following the case at all.
They don't line up. They're not even. It's backwards.
It would be an odd configuration.
Well, odd. It would be like Ripley's Believe It or Not. The dog would have to have their teeth the opposite way.
The judge in Karen Reed's homicide case must now decide whether the defense's dog bite expert is qualified to testify at trial. We have an investigative journalist coming on the program this morning to help us break down what really happened at 34 Fairview Road. And we're comparing the injury sustained by Officer John O'Keefe to a confirmed dog bite from Chloe. We have our own dog bite expert breaking it all down. Also coming up this hour, we know now 5 people are charged in the death of singer Liam Payne, including another alleged drug dealer and a friend. Well, one of the accused is saying now that he's being made a scapegoat. So who is most responsible for Payne's death? We'll talk about it. And the daughter of Ruby Franke now opening up about her mother's abusive relationship with the family's therapist. We'll hear about the bombshell accusations in her new memoir. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Wednesday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? It is that time. Let's get it going. Go ahead and grab a cup of coffee. It's time now for my opening statement. She was wondering if she made the news. How about that? Child abuser Ruby Franke asked if, quote, we made the news. One day, just one day, after she was arrested for the horrific abuse of her 2 young children. What a disgusting, soulless, sorry excuse for a mother. Media publicity is apparently a greater concern than the health and the well-being of the children that she birthed. I know she's locked up, but I sure hope somebody throws away the key. Let's not forget, Ruby Franke isn't just any child abuser. No, she is an extra special kind of child abuser. She was one who was monetizing her mommying, telling the world that she was a parenting expert. But she was in fact privately torturing her children. I really hope she's got a TV in jail too, so she can see that she's made the news again. Let's hope and pray, in all seriousness, hope and pray that her poor children are doing well with their trauma recovery. Because it's not about her. As much as she wants that TV coverage, it's not. It's about her kids. So my friends, let us hope and pray that their life from here on out is full of happiness, full of safety, and full of respect. Those children deserved to be loved. And let's pray that no children are ever treated the way that Ruby Franke treated hers. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
Did you know Nasiah to go to Mr. Butts' place of work to assist him with anything there?
Yes, there was a couple of times that she went with his daughter and they went up there to go clean up at his shop.
And how would they get it? If you remember?
He would come and pick them up.
And was that in that white truck that you talked about earlier?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In Michigan, we've got Jarvis Butt's preliminary hearing continuing this morning at 10 a.m. He's charged with the murder of 13-year-old Nasiah Harris. And in Massachusetts, we've got Brian Walsh. He's going to be in court for a motions hearing at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. He's accused of murdering his wife, Anna, who still has never been found. And opening statements start up today in the case against defendant Victor Rivera. He's accused of shooting and killing 2 people in New Hampshire. Court's going to convene in that case at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Now, to our top story. We are waiting for the judge to make a ruling on whether the defense's dog bite expert is going to be qualified to testify at her second trial, at Karen Reed's second trial. Now, prosecutors are trying to exclude Dr. Marie Russell from Karen Reed's retrial, and her opinion that Officer John O'Keefe was attacked by a dog. Russell testified over 2 days in what's called a Daubert hearing, where the court acts as a gatekeeper to make sure that the evidence is reliable and trustworthy and can be received by the jury.
It is remarkable as a doctor, as a scientist, that there is no dog DNA in any of those swabs or holes. It's remarkable, isn't it?
Remarkable would not be the word I use.
Extraordinary.
No, I disagree.
Hard to believe.
I disagree.
Okay. Now, there is no dog DNA. Do you think somehow that hurts your cause or your case, for your opinion?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Now, Karen Reed is accused of murdering her Boston police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts theorizes that she hit him by backing into him with her Lexus SUV in a drunken fit of rage. Now, this was during a snowstorm back in January of 2022. Now, Officer O'Keefe died after he was left out in the cold, died from head injuries and from hypothermia. He was outside of the residence at 34 Fairview Road. We have a very special guest this morning I want to bring in to talk about this case, to talk about everything that is alleged to have happened at 34 Fairview Road. He did a podcast about it. He is someone very well known and respected in the true crime community. He is an investigative journalist, a New York Times best-selling author. His name is M. William Phelps. I want to welcome him on now. Matthew, good morning. Thank you so much for coming on Opening Statements today.
Thank you for having me, Julie. It's great to meet you, finally.
Certainly. Well, I have the world of respect for you and how you approached this case with objectivity and did well over 100 interviews, if I recall, in preparation for the podcast series you've released that's called 34 Fairview Road. By the way, for all of our courties watching, I recommend you listen to it if you haven't already. Would you kind of tell me, when you were deciding to go in and do this this podcast, did you then walk away with what you were expected to discover, or did you discover something totally different than what you anticipated, Matthew?
Honest, I wasn't really interested in this case much in the beginning when it first started. It was that Occam's razor type of thing where a simple case of drunk driving, and it's just not a high profile enough case to really consider for me. So that being said, after I was approached to maybe look at this for a podcast, I then begin to dig into it. And I realized that, this conspiracy theory narrative that was out there, well, if it had any legs to it, I would absolutely uncover that. And so I went into it thinking, well, if the conspiracy's there, then I'll report on that. If it's not there, then I'll report on that. I go in it in the middle and I try to, figure out what the hell is going on here. And I've never, ever, ever seen anything like this in my 25-year career in true crime. Not ever.
Matthew, I am with you. Neither have I. And did you find that there was a conspiracy that originated anywhere in this case?
Absolutely not. The conspiracy, I believe, and it's not really me, it's what the evidence shows, is the conspiracy really originates when Karen Reed is arrested that second time and taken to the barracks, and she plants that seed right there on the body cam, where she says, and Albert did it, and I'm paraphrasing her there.
Right.
It's that's where this all begins, really, at least publicly, right? But I think, looking at the facts of the case, it began months and months before that.
Right.
The day or the day after this event occurred.
Yes, yes. And many of us, myself included, heard about this case with that clip on the news that was circulated where she's outside in the courthouse steps saying there's a conspiracy and I'm being framed, and Alan Jackson is saying it, my client's being framed, and this is a cover. I mean, it was like we all had to work backwards, that they put it out there that this is going on, and then everybody else is going, okay, where is the conspiracy? And here you are objectively going in, no horse in the race, no dog in the fight, whatever expression you want to use, just looking to get to the truth. And the evidence supported the state's theory, did it not, regarding this being a homicide by vehicle while DUI?
Absolutely. I mean, when you take out all of the noise and all of the opinions and all of the social media part of it, just one side, and you look at this case objectively, in facts being what? Witness testimony, and all the documentation. And you're showing a picture right now of John O'Keefe's arm. I mean, when you look at the evidence, with knowledge of how to interpret evidence, and, it's pretty damn clear what happened here.
Right.
And here we are, Julie, in 2025, and we're still talking about the dog. Something that never, ever, ever happened. The evidence supports that it never happened. There was no dog attack. The only one who has been really saying that there's a dog attack is the Dr. Russell, who was, she's like the only one who's saying, yeah, he was attacked by a dog.
Right. You did an episode, and again, listen to 34 Fairview Road, my friends at home. You did an episode called, I believe the title was, Oh, Wait, the Dog Did It. And you go through the conspiracy theory that the defense team floated out there for public consumption that Chloe, the German Shepherd, did this. I have a clip from yesterday's hearing, Matthew. As you know, Dr. Marie Russell, the woman hired by the defense team, whose opinion it is that this was a dog bite to John O'Keefe's arm, is testifying. And this is on cross, where Hank Brennan asks her about Chloe and her knowledge of Chloe. Let's listen.
Do you know that Chloe exists, that we provided notice to you, that we went up and saw Chloe and took molds? Did you know that?
Objection, Your Honor.
Did you know that? Going to allow it. Did you know that, Doctor?
I do know that now.
Now that you know that Chloe's available, wouldn't those molds be helpful? Wouldn't you want to look at them and compare them to the distances on the abrasions on Mr. O'Keefe's arm?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow it.
I don't think it's necessary for many reasons.
Okay, so a couple things to unpack. I always say let's back the truck up, because the defense gets evidence about Chloe that they've been accusing, actual molds from her mouth, and they're objecting. They don't want it coming in front of the judge or the world who's televising this, and they also have a doctor who's completely disinterested in seeing what those molds show and if they support her theory. Your reaction to it, please, Matthew.
I mean, that you just said everything you need to know about that. Not only that, but now we know that they swabbed all of the, tears and holes in John O'Keefe's a hoodie that he was wearing, and they found no canine DNA. So that alone makes it impossible, absolutely, for a dog to have scratched him or bit him. Now, what was her response yesterday to that? Well, the evidence was tainted. You see, that's the go-to for everything when we're talking about any part of this conspiracy is, well, he's corrupt. Well, they're corrupt. Well, the evidence was fabricated. You can say that to a certain extent, but after a while, come on. I mean, facts are facts. I mean, they forensically tested the shirt, and there's no canine DNA. That's all I need to hear. That's all I need to hear. I'm a little bit frustrated that all day yesterday, you have three high-priced attorneys in a courtroom and Karen Reed still arguing this dog narrative that she brought into this case, right? It never existed before she brought it into the case.
You're
It seemed-
correct. And I couldn't be more
And
impressed
money.
with Hank Brennan. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there, Matthew. I was just going to say I could have been more impressed with Hank Brennan going and finding the dog, testing the dog, getting the molds. And what were you about to
Yeah.
say before? We're just about out of time, but I wanted you to finish.
I just wanted to say, I mean, I sat there saying this is all a waste of time, energy, and money.
And William Phelps, you are such a fantastic journalist who cares about accuracy. You have integrity and the facts. And I encourage everybody to listen to your podcast, 34 Fairview Road. And that's not the only podcast he's got. He's got Crossing the Line and several others. And my gosh, he's written numerous books. We're going to have you back. We'd love to talk more about this case and address some of the other issues you uncovered. Matthew, thank you kindly. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Julie.
Certainly. Still to come here on Opening Statements. Our Karen Reed coverage isn't over. We have our own dog bite expert coming on this morning on the program to look at this photo. So the prosecution introduced this picture, which is an actual dog bite from Chloe. We're going to see what the expert has to say about it.
This allegedly is a dog bite from Chloe,
Yes,
and you see the tearing of the skin, don't you?
yes.
And you can see the corners where the incisors would penetrate through a puncture. Yes?
I'm not sure what teeth punctured this, but yes.
Our dog bite expert will weigh in coming up. But first, here's what's trending in true crime. We have 5 people now charged in singer Liam Payne's death. So we're asking, who is really to blame here? Our power panel weighs in after the break. That was Liam Payne singing Teardrops. Now, one of his last companions is crying foul, saying that he's being made into a scapegoat. 5 people are now charged in connection with the death of the One Direction singing superstar. A hotel worker in Argentina recently turned himself in for allegedly supplying the drugs to Liam Payne. Police say the Payne fell from a hotel balcony last October after hotel staff called police twice in the days leading up to his fall.
Y necesitamos que nos envíen a alguien urgente porque, bueno, yo no sé si corre riesgo la vida del huésped. Está en una habitación que tiene balcón y, bueno, estamos un poco con temor de que haga algo que le ponga en riesgo
¿Hace
su
cuánto que
vida.
está ahí o es un hotel de vivienda?
No, es hace 2 o 3 días que está acá.
Payne's friend Roger Norris is still in custody in Argentina. He's accused of manslaughter in the case. According to the New York Post, Norris is accusing Argentina, though, of making an example out of him in order to save face after Payne's death. Investigators are saying that Norris and 2 hotel workers knew Payne was extremely intoxicated and didn't do enough to keep him from that open balcony. So our question this morning to our power panel is, who's most responsible legally for Liam Payne's death? Let's bring in our legal eagles now. We have death penalty qualified defense attorney Don Malarsic. He's also a trial advocacy professor and criminal defense and civil rights attorney Kesia Early. Good morning to you both. Don, let me begin with you, please. In assessing legal liability here, who do you think is most responsible?
Well, Julie, we've had a real shift in American jurisprudence that really tries to hold people who supply drugs to someone who overdoses responsible. I've defended a number of these cases. It's my opinion that the person most responsible for Liam Payne's death is Liam himself. I mean, he ingested these drugs, and that's what caused his death. But we are now looking at, as a result of the incredible amount of overdoses and fentanyl and heroin and illegal drugs, holding other individuals responsible. So the question becomes, did someone really know that this supplying of these drugs would cause his death? What kind of state was he in? Were there prior concerns about his well-being? No one intended to kill him when they provided these drugs. That's obvious. But we are now in a place in America where we are looking to hold anyone responsible who supplies illegal drugs. And I think it's a direct result of the incredible trauma that we're all experiencing as a result of the incredible rise in overdoses and deaths.
Don, great points. Thank you for all of that. Kesia, to you next, please. Your thoughts on legal liability here?
Julie, it's important to know that criminal intent, the mens rea, is absolutely important and proven in this case. So to say that you're going to hold someone responsible because they appear to be intoxicated and there was a balcony in the room, then that would just set the precedent for all of the hotel workers, all of the hotels that have balconies that, well, if you see someone intoxicated, South Beach here in Florida, there's intoxicated college students all the time. So is this going to open up the floodgates for not only criminal liability, but civil liability simply because someone cannot hold their alcohol? I just think this is far reaching. And I agree with my colleague that ultimately the person responsible is the person that unfortunately ingested the drugs. Not to say that this is not an unfortunate event, but it's far reaching for prosecutors to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that there is some criminal liability simply because you did not do more based on your speculation.
Excellent points. Casey, thank you for that. Civil suits, we will watch for that. As soon as you said that, oh boy, we're hearing about the criminal allegations now, but certainly something our viewers will look ahead to. We'll leave it there for now. Want to turn to some other trending news and pick your brains about this case. The case involving the former gang leader who's accused of having rap superstar Tupac Shakur killed is now trying to get all the charges in his case dismissed. This week, the attorney representing Dwayne Keefe D. Davis filed a motion alleging egregious constitutional violations due to the 27-year delay in his prosecution. Davis's defense team is slamming the prosecutors in Las Vegas for failing to honor what they say are immunity agreements. That's what they're saying, not what the police are saying. And they say that there was a decades-long process that has now prejudiced the jury pool. The district attorney has yet to respond to the filing. We know beloved rapper Tupac Shakur was murdered in a shooting in Las Vegas on the Strip back in 1996. Dwayne Keefe D. Davis was arrested in 2023.
So what they got you for, man?
Oh man, biggest case in Las Vegas history.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Like recent?
September 7th, 1996.
Oh, no. Wow. That's a long time. That's a long time away. Sure took him a while, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, it was never a formal immunity agreement, only an understanding that law enforcement wouldn't use his statements against him in the interviews they did, but then he wrote a book about what he says he did. He's set to go on trial in March. Is Keefe D being treated unfairly here by the state? Casey, I want to start with you this time. Your thoughts, please.
I don't think so. And here's why. Yes, it was a 27-year delay in the charges. However, he wrote this memoir in 2019. So there was a few years of this newly discovered evidence that he provided in this memoir. And he was arrested in 2023. But we have this thing in Florida that's called corpus delicti, where the body of a crime, you cannot use this confession. If he did make this confession that he put this hit out for Tupac in his memoir until the state proves your case beyond a reasonable doubt. But I don't think that it was the state's delay. I believe that he provided the necessary information. If he should have never made these admissions, whether it was to sell a book or just for entertainment, because he provided that, and maybe there's corroborating evidence in conjunction with that confession. So I do believe that the state has a good chance of beating this motion to dismiss simply because of the newly discovered evidence.
Casey, thank you for that. Dawn, your thoughts, please.
I agree with Casey. If you're a suspect in an unsolved murder case, here's a piece of free legal advice. Don't write a memoir implicating yourself in that murder. That's not a good idea. Now, beyond that, though, there is a legitimate argument there that a defense is raising, and a 27-year delay is a significant delay. And sometimes this happens. Witnesses' memories fade. Witnesses pass away. They're no longer there. Evidence deteriorates. It's lost. So there are some legitimate issues there. What the defense has to show is that the state purposely waited And now the defense is prejudiced. But Keefe's right. If they have this new evidence of his confession in his memoir or any implicating statements in his memoir, that really blows this idea that the state weighted it and prejudiced my client out of the water. So he's his own worst enemy here. As you can see him talking in the back of the police car, writing a book. These are real problems that the defense is probably not going to be able to overcome to get the case dismissed for pretrial delay.
Such great insight from you both. And you're both sticking around. Don Malarsic, Casey Early, stand by kindly, please, for more cues. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, we're talking about the daughter of disgraced momfluencer and child abuser Ruby Franke. So her daughter is now opening up about the abuse her mother inflicted, sharing details in her new memoir. The revelations are next. And another big hearing in the case against defendant Karen Reed in Massachusetts. The defense wants to bring in a woman they say is a qualified dog bite expert, but she might stay out. Well, we're bringing in our expert. He's been qualified in state and federal court, and he's going to compare these two pictures. Stay with us. Back to opening statements this morning. We're shining a spotlight on the oldest daughter of former mommy vlogger Ruby Franke, who's revealing what it was like to grow up with her abusive mother. Now, before being convicted of abusing two of her children, Ruby Franke had a popular YouTube show called 8 Passengers, which was featuring her no-nonsense style of parenting. But then Franke's youngest son escaped the home of Ruby Franke's business partner, Jody Hildebrand, and showed up at a neighbor's house emaciated and bruised. He had duct tape on his ankles. And in her new memoir, Sherry Franke describes the emotional and physical abuse that she says she and her 5 siblings all endured. Here she is speaking to ABC News.
When I was younger, around like 5, 6, like Ruby was really physical. Like, you know, whether it was like a slap to the lip or a slap to the cheek. When I would practice the piano, you know, like her hand would slam and like it was really scary. And honestly, when she met Jody, that kind of stopped.
Wow, do you notice how she calls her mother Franke? Now Sherry, or calls her mother Ruby, calls her Ruby, calls her by her first name. Now Sherry Franke also wrote that her mother asked, quote, if we made the news just one day after she was arrested for abusing her 2 youngest kids. So that was apparently her big concern, not, oh, the kids are okay. Did it get publicity? Let's talk about it with our power panel. Still with me, our legal eagles, Don Malarsic and Casey Early, and welcoming in now on the panel, Dr. Sue Kornbluth, a psychology expert who specializes in family and relationship matters. She's also a published author as well. Dr. Sue, first of all, what do you think of this child, Sherry Franke, calling her mother by her first name? When she does this interview, she calls her Ruby, says Ruby was really physical with us. What does that tell you?
Well, first of all, Julie, let me just say your opening statement was on fire, so I appreciate that. And second of all, what she's doing there is separating herself from her mother. And because of all of the abuse that had taken place, she has now separated herself from her and doesn't want much to do with her. I think a more powerful statement that she had said in that interview, which I did watch, was that, has your mother apologized to you? And she said, yes, she has apologized. And she believes her own apology, but I do not believe her apology. And that is a very bold statement by a very brave young woman to go on and say that, because Ruby Franke, I believe, lives in a delusional world about who she is and what she is. And she is mostly about herself, attention, and she may be sorry, but it's not authentic. So her daughter is removing herself from her and not identifying her as her mother anymore due to all of this abuse to protect herself.
Yeah, I can't blame her. This is really helpful insight, Dr. Sue. Thank you. I have another clip from Sherry Franke's interview with ABC. Here she's talking about that relationship that her mother had with Jody Hildebrand, the other child abuser, just as bad as Ruby Franke. Horrible, these two ladies in this business they concocted. Big fraud it was. What was going on behind closed doors was horrific. Let's listen to what Sherry Franke thinks about this relationship.
I certainly got weird vibes from Jody and Ruby. I don't think it's normal at all that a therapist would move into her client's home. I was moving out to college and I hadn't even left the house yet, and she is in my room and in my bed.
What was that relationship between the two of them?
Ruby tried to be secretive about it, and so I don't know all the details, but just the vibes that I was getting was that something was strange between them.
Oh my, so there was a lot going on between those two. A lot of, seems conspiring to commit crimes. Casey Early, you are a fierce protector of children, have handled a lot of child abuse cases. What do you think about poor Sherry Franke now coming out and saying that she also was abused through her childhood by these two, or by her mother?
Yeah, my motherly instincts just went off. I mean, I'm always leery about parents, first and foremost, who push their kids, whether it's social media, YouTube, and project this perfect relationship, because we know, even as a mother of four, that there is no perfect relationship. So there's something going on in the background. And then when you couple that with it being monetized and the parents are making money, of course they want to continue this, and children want to be children. So when you force them to do this, you have to have a heavy hand. You have to have a stern hand. And looking at the abuse, we can tell what was going on in the background. So it was just an uncomfortable situation, unfortunate situation. And I'm thankful that not only are the children out of it, but this is the healing process. Just like the psychologist said, this separation from their abuser, mother or not, she was supposed to protect, and she failed miserably at that job. So I'm glad that they're not only separated, but moving from this abuse in the future.
Right, Casey, thank you for that. I have another clip. This is where one of Ruby Franke's children who suffered torture in the home is nervous to talk to the EMTs, scared to death when they go in the home to try to rescue her. Let's watch.
You don't want to talk? Okay. There's nothing at all you want to talk about at all? It's okay to talk to me. Are you scared? Just nervous. What? Just nervous.
A child was petrified. Don Malarczyk, I know this breaks your heart. You've seen it all throughout your career. Your thoughts on this mother, Ruby Franke, painting herself to the world as this great parent, but then behind closed doors, her children were suffering so badly. What does that say to you?
You know, every child abuse case is horrific. It's difficult. It's unimaginable. But, you know, there are sometimes not excuses, but you can look at what was going on in this family's life to explain how a child may have been malnourished. Maybe there wasn't enough money. They didn't have the funds to have food. Maybe the parents were drug addicted and needed some help. Perhaps there were some untreated and undiagnosed mental health issues that caused the children to be neglected or abused. Those aren't excuses, but those are cases where you can kind of get your head around what happened here and give some explanation. But this is really the worst of the worst. This was an able-bodied, intelligent, articulate, wealthy woman who monetized the abuse of her children. It's just unthinkable. It's unimaginable. And that fear and that nervousness that you saw in that young child's voice and in her eyes when she's talking to first responders tells it all. She lived in fear. She lived in terror. And that's just really the worst form of the abuse, to have a mom that is monetizing that and making money off of it. It's really appalling, and there's just really no mitigation that I can even think of or imagine to explain how her children got here.
Don, thank you. Such excellent insight from you all. We've got to leave it there for time. Big thank you to Dr. Sue Kornbluth and attorneys Don Malarczyk and Casey Early. We'll see you all very soon. When we come back, I was another contentious hearing in Massachusetts in the case against defendant Karen Reed. Coming up next, our own dog bite expert weighs in and compares the evidence photos. We'll be right back.
And when you were considering that information, did you know from the criminalistics reports that shards of that broken taillight were littered in his sweater?
I did not know that.
When's the first time you learned of that?
right now.
Now for what's tipping the scales in the case against defendant Karen Reed. Specially appointed prosecutor Hank Brennan came out swinging during his cross-examination of Dr. Marie Russell. She is the witness the defense team wants to call to give the opinion that what happened to John O'Keefe's arm was a dog bite. Now, we know that Chloe, the family dog at the residence at 34 Fairview Road at the time, had an incident where she did bite someone previously. So Hank Brennan was smart. He introduced in this hearing actual evidence of one of Chloe's bites. You can see it there on the right, and was looking for comparison to the injuries to John O'Keefe. Take a listen.
This is not consistent with a dog biting and then pulling the skin.
This is consistent with an avulsion wound caused by a dog.
Okay. Very different wound than we looked at on Mr. O'Keefe's arm.
On
Mr. O'Keefe's arm, very different, right?
Correct.
Your opinion that this is a dog attack.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had peer review of this opinion with this photograph?
No.
We have a special guest we're going to bring in now. He is a canine expert, been certified in both state and federal court to give opinions on dog bites and other canine matters. He's a retired lieutenant as well. Mike Gould, in a favorite on the program as a law enforcement analyst. Thank you for doing this comparison for us. We want your expert opinion. So, Lieutenant, when you look at these two pictures side by side, tell us what you see, please.
Yeah. So, Julie, this is a little frustrating to me. This is like trying to explain to my granddaughter that the earth is round. The easiest thing I do is just show her a photograph so she can understand it. A photograph from space, and you can see the earth is round. These things are two completely different injuries. One is clearly, that's all you have to see. That is a dog bite. The witness is calling it avulsion. Obviously, that's the diagnosis of the injury. But what it's created by is one of the dog's canine teeth. You can see it clearly. That's a left hand, it looks like to me, maybe. The photograph of John O'Keefe has no canine punctures from a dog. They're primarily scratches from claw marks from, in my opinion, a scavenger animal that has claws to climb, and they're razor sharp. Dogs' claws are not razor sharp. Their dog's paws, nails are primarily for digging holes. We have nails, and so we have a lot in common. We have a certain amount of teeth. Humans have 32 teeth. Dogs have 42 teeth. We have a lot of similarities. The wound on the right is a very typical bite created by the dog's canine teeth. Canine teeth are used for tearing and ripping. Incisors are used for chewing, and molars are used for crushing. So a lot of this, in my opinion, just went, way crazy. We're talking about paradoxal undressing and so forth. This is so clear to me that it's not a dog bite. You may not have to accept the fact that I believe strongly it was a scavenger animal, but I can tell you with certainty these marks were not created by a dog, particularly a German Shepherd or a dog of that magnitude. This was, again, I can visualize it very clearly. A scavenger coming out at 2 o'clock in the morning, detecting a warmer part of the snow than others, and started digging at it and was scared away by somebody in the house, and that's the end of it. This couldn't even happen to a live, conscious person, those wounds, because it would require the person to lay down with his arm out and allow an animal to scratch them. So it's ridiculous on almost every level. And, frankly, the DNA, whether there was DNA on the wound or not, it would not, canine DNA, it wouldn't change my opinion one bit. You can, our other experts can argue how DNA got there, but it doesn't, this is not just simply not a dog bite or a dog scratch.
And we certainly value your opinion immensely, Lieutenant. And as you noted, the evidence shows no canine DNA whatsoever was found on Officer John O'Keefe. So there is that. There's also no evidence that was presented at trial or that even exists to show that he was in the house. There's zero evidence of that as well. During this hearing, and you were watching it with us live, Lieutenant, you were on this program with me for part of it, and then later in the day, after I had left the desk, something really, really illuminating happened in my view. I thought it was just brilliant advocacy that Hank Brennan held that witness's feet to the fire and said, okay, you say dog bite. Well, I'm going to take you through every single mark on this arm. I'm going to ask you what I know you saw it, Lieutenant. We've got a clip of that. This clip in particular was kind of like the moment of the cross, or one of the big moments, if you will. There were a few bombshells, but let's take a look at this together.
You see that this here, 2 teeth, if the dog's canines started here and worked their way down this way, they don't line up. They're not even. It's backwards.
It would be an odd configuration.
Well, odd. It would be like Ripley's Believe It or Not. The dog would have to have their teeth the opposite way.
No, I could see how that could happen.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Lieutenant, what did you think of that moment?
Right. Well, I love those, the courtroom drama, the smoking gun, apparently. But if I was testifying, I would highlight the fact that, in my opinion, those weren't even teeth marks. Those were scratches created by claws, not teeth. And I would show you pictures of possum scratch. I keep going back to this possum thing. I'm obsessed with it, I guess. But I would go back to showing you how a possum climbs a tree, and those exact striations with the exact width of each one of those marks are identical to that of a scavenger, not a dog. And they're not bite marks. The bite marks are in the center of that photograph. So in my opinion, the claw marks on each side are what a scavenger animal would use to hold down and nibble away at the flesh, which you can kind of see little bits of that in the middle of the in the picture there. So I could almost determine which teeth, whether it was one of the 4 canine teeth, whether it was the incisors, or in this case, claws were used on those outer striations, and the rest was. Yeah. And this only took a second or two, and the animal was obviously scared away by noise inside the house.
And this is interesting, Lieutenant, we're almost out of time, but quickly, something that came up, teeth versus claws. Are you able to tell, when you look at a bite that is, in fact, from a dog, are you able to tell what marks come from teeth versus which come from claws?
Absolutely, absolutely. So
wow.
Claws are scratching marks. You could try it with your family pet. Take your little French bulldog and try to reproduce. It's not going to happen. You couldn't do it. So you easily identify each tooth and scratches and claw marks.
Lieutenant, as this doctor was saying on the stand yesterday that she couldn't, and that was a fact that Hank Brennan obviously talked to someone like you. He talked to someone who clearly got him he was prepared. He came in ready to play. He represented Whitey Bollinger. This guy knows his stuff. He's surely able to prosecute Karen Reed, and he's doing it with such precision and brilliance. Have to leave it there. Lieutenant Gold, thank you so much for your opinion, your insight. Likewise, we'll see you soon. And my friends, that's all for this episode of Opening Statements, but guess what? We're not going anywhere. Court TV Live begins next. We're picking up with the prelim in the murder of Naziah Harris.